What's good, everybody? This is the Quant Edge video series presented by FantasySportsMarkets.com. He, of course, is downtown Derek Brown. I'm Ben Heisler. This video series brought to you by FantasySportsMarkets.com. If you guys are looking for a place this football season to play daily without salary caps and have an opportunity to compete for major cash prizes, including hundreds of thousands each and every week, head on over to FantasySportsMarkets.com and use that promo code that you see below for $5 free without a deposit needed. All right, D-Bro, we've been going through all our different mock drafts. We've been going through some drafts in some of our regular best ball leagues, and there's a lot of people that get concerned when they don't get some of the top-tier running backs early on. Maybe just their draft position wasn't good or their auction strategy was waiting for some of the value to come down. But in looking at Fantasy Football Calculator's third-round running backs, there are three guys that come to mind. We're going to go through them today because I think you can make a really compelling argument that Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, and Derrick Henry are all outstanding values at their average draft position.
Well, I love all three of these running backs, and like you're talking about, Ben, if you miss out on the top tier, they're still there. I put all of these guys in that top tier. They all have top 5 to 10 potential. And you're talking about Leonard Fournette. Let's start this off. This guy is going to be fed volume. As long as he is on the field, it's going to happen. Over the last 2 seasons, out of running backs in games where they've had 25 or more touches, he ranks 5th. In only 21 games, the dude has stacked a 25-touch game 7 times. If he sees that bump in the pass game like we're hearing about from out of the Jaguars camp, he's going to be a huge value. Last year alone, he was on pace for 52 targets. And amongst the 20 running backs that had 52 targets last year, if you would extrapolate it, because we had a half season worth of data on that, he would have ranked 6th behind Gurley and ahead of James Conner in yards per target. So I love Leonard Fournette as a third-round buy.
I think Fournette is an outstanding target at that position. I think the recency bias with a lot of fans is going to be awfully strong, but especially in that passing game, you're getting now 77 vacated targets that TJ Yeldon had, that Fournette, and the coaching staff has talked about it too. They want to be able to feed him the rock in the running game. They want to incorporate him in the passing game. For pure bell cow back status, to be able to get somebody like Fournette in the early part of the third round, I think you can feel really good about it. What about somebody like Marlon Mack? This is another more popular name because of how well he played throughout the 2018 season. I think some people might want to pass on him, especially in PPR leagues, because they're not going to see a whole lot of receptions out of Mack, and there have always been concerns about his health. But he's another name that you really like in the middle of the third round at 306.
I love him at that spot because the way that I view Mack is I look at him, if you go over to the Quant Edge head-to-head player comparison tool and you look at him versus a player that's going around earlier than him like a Nick Chubb, I look at both of them as having similar touchdown expectations. Now Mack is going to have those massive spike weeks. If you look at the week-to-week metrics, it's a lot more stable for Nick Chubb looking at last year and looking at versus Marlon Mack. But Marlon Mack is a guy that we should not be dismissing as a guy that could end up with 12 to 15 rushing touchdowns. And just because he's not involved in the pass game a ton, that's the same argument against Nick Chubb. But you get him around later. Top 5 offensive line he's running behind. You look at last year, 12 games. The dude was 10th in goal line carries, or top 10 in goal line carries, and he was top 10 in red zone touches. The Colts have an improving defense. If they're up in games, Marlon Mack is a guy that you can get there at a later price discount than Nick Chubb, and he is going to eat and end up with a similar amount of touchdowns.
I mean, some of those games that we saw, midway through the season, you had the 29.9 fantasy point game against Buffalo. The week after that, 26.9 against Oakland. We was super efficient too, 6.6 yards per carry. Both times over 126 yards in that games against Buffalo and Oakland. With Mack, you're going to get those high-volume games. And again, for a third-round running back, as long as he's healthy, you know that if the Colts are in control of the game, they're probably going to be feeding him. And I think that's another good value pick. Here's another fascinating name, and it's a guy that maybe recency bias is actually going to work in the wrong side of, and that's Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was atrocious the first 13 weeks of the season. And then all of a sudden, that Thursday night game against Jacksonville, and we can try and figure out what the hell happened with the Jaguars defense in that game. 17 rushes for 238 yards. He had the 4-touchdown game, had 48 fantasy points. I think owners are going to go in saying, okay, we know that they're going to talk about Derrick Henry getting the ball, but Are they actually going to consistently give him the ball throughout the course of the regular season? Why are you high on Derrick Henry again and for 2019?
Yeah, Ben, I'm huge on Derrick Henry for this year. I don't think that what we saw over the last 4 weeks, he got 22 and a half touches per game, half of his season total touchdowns. I think that's the precipice of what we can expect for Derrick Henry in this year. And you have the news of Taylor Lewan coming out, and he's going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the year. And people are possibly going to move Derrick Henry a little bit further down boards, because if you look at the entirety of a fantasy season, that's 30% of your fantasy regular season. So people are going to say, all right, well, I wasn't high on Derrick Henry before. Now I'm really going to bump him down. And they could be worried about this offensive line. Derrick Henry, outside of those 4 games in the whole year, 4th in evaded tackles, 3rd in juke rate, 1st in yards created per carry. And if you look at the Taylor Lewan suspension, I don't know if this is going to make as much of a difference as people are making it out to. Yes, if you go to the Quant Edge and you go to the injury impact tool, you click down, you go to Taylor Lewan, and you look at it. This dude has had a massive impact on this run game. I will not dispute that at all. Run success rates up from 39 to 45%. Yards per carry when he's on the field jumps from 3.6 to 4.5. But his backup, Dennis Kelly, is no slouch. So this is the guy that's going to be toting it and manning that line for the first 4 weeks. He has held the line very well. Run success rates with him in the game have jumped from 42% to 47%. Explosive run rates have gone from 3.5 to 4.6, and yards per carry is stayed stable at 4.4. So I don't look at that as being this ginormous detriment to Derrick Henry and what his outlook looks like for this year.
Yeah, I think it's another really impressive opportunity for Derrick Henry. I know we've talked about it for several years, but man, when you look at that December and you see 625 yards in the month of December to go along with 8 rushing touchdowns, their offensive coordinator said this is the guy that we want to ride into this season. You have to feel strong about it. And again, Derrick Henry's average draft position via Fantasy Football Calculator is 311 right now, but it's probably going to drop because of the Taylor Lewan suspension of those first 4 games. Maybe you get 4th round value for Derrick Henry, when in reality is that's a guy that you could probably be drafting in the 2nd round and feel very, very good about it. For more analysis like this, make sure you guys are continuing to check out the Quant Edge video series, subscribe to our YouTube pages, and like us on Facebook as well as on Twitter at FSM Contest and at the Quant Edge. For Derek, I'm Ben. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you soon.